Hey guys, welcome back to Tiny Fibre Studio. This is episode 6 of a podcast about knitting, spinning, and specifically me being a more purposeful spinner by only knitting with my own handspun in 2017. My name is Becks, and in this episode I have a status report on a couple of works in progress that I've showed you previously. Also a little tiny bit of stash enhancement, maybe, and a little bit more discussion around the sample along that we've been talking about in previous episodes, and also a little bit of a Q&A towards the end as well. So before we go any further, I always like to talk a little bit about what it is that I'm wearing. And I have shown this one before, but it's one that I wear a lot. So it's the Chickadee cardigan by Ysolda Teague from the Little Red in the City book. I wear it a lot. It's made of Rowan felted tweed and it's pretty hard wearing. I lean on my elbows a lot, which is a really bad habit, which is not really good for knitwear, but it's totally fine. And yeah, very happy with it. I do need to make time though, or prioritise time, to sort out the buttonholes because the buttonholes are stretched a little bit over time and it's left some little bits of gaping going on here. So at some stage I need to find the time to sort those out. But apart from that, it's a great cardigan and I wear it a lot. So first of all, let's get started with works in progress. I did mention that if I managed to cast on my cowl, then I probably wouldn't get very much done on my socks that I showed you last week, and that is absolutely the case. My socks currently look like this, so really not very much done since I last saw you. In fact, where are we? Maybe about 6 rows got done, according to my progress keeper. So my socks are pretty much on hold for a little while. I'm keeping those in one of my other sock sacks. We talked about the sock sack last time because I was showing you the one that isn't divided, but if I can manipulate this one, I'll just show you. This is one of the divided ones. So it has a divider in the middle that has a zip, so it's actually a pocket where you can put notions and stitch markers and crochet hooks and stuff like that. And then it has the yarn guides as well, which I'm not currently using just because it's been kind of in and out of this bag a little bit. So that is a sock sack by Ramona Rose. You can find it on Craftsy. She now does it in 3 different sizes in the one pattern. When I bought the pattern, it was just one size. So whatever that size is what I have for all of my small project bags. So that is my progress, or otherwise, on the socks. The other thing that is a work in progress is the cowl. Yay! I'm so happy to have actually started this freaking cowl because I've been spinning for it literally since episode 1. I'm currently on the third, I've just finished the 3rd repeat of the 2nd chart. There's 5 repeats of that chart and then you go into, I think, 4 more charts after that. I'm really happy with how it's coming out. It's knitting up beautifully, it's looking very consistent. I love these kind of faux cables are really cute. It's actually a really easy pattern to knit because all of the patterns just kind of follow the previous row. So I don't think I'm going to have any trouble knitting with it socially. We'll find out on Sunday because of course Sunday is my knitting morning, or knitter's church as we refer to it. And I will see how it goes with knitting socially, but I think it's going to be okay because it's pretty straightforward to follow. The cast on was interesting. The cast on is a Channel Islands cast on and it creates this kind of slightly picot edge. It's not really picot, but it's done with 3 strands of yarn. It was a bit of a pain, to be honest. I think just because you have to fairly carefully tension each cast on stitch to try to make it an equal distance from the previous one. and it did take me a couple of attempts to kind of get used to the rhythm of it. You also have to retension your yarn in between every cast on stitch. You have to kind of wrap it around your thumb again, which makes it really slow going, especially when there are 360 stitches to cast on. So I'm kind of glad that's over. On the other hand, it has made me think about what I'm going to do for the bind off, because I think in the pattern it's just written as a standard bind off. I'm wondering whether there's anything that kind of matches the Channel Islands cast on, so I might have a look at that and see whether there's something I can find that's going to match. But yeah, progress-wise, very happy with it. I'm just coming to the end of the first ball of yarn, which was the biggest, but I have 3 more, roughly about the same size as that. So I've got plenty of yarn left. I did some calculations and I should have plenty. If I don't quite have enough, I have got the samples that I spun from the same fibre, so if push came to shove, I have got those options. So we'll see, see how it goes. But yeah, progress on the cowl, super happy with it. It feels fine against my neck, and I think it will be completely fine when it's been blocked. For some people, they might consider it a little bit on the hard wearing side, but you know what? That's completely fine with me. I don't mind things being hard wearing. I'd much rather they're hard wearing than just start pilling as soon as they come off the needles, because I've spent a long time working on this. I want it to look good for a long time. So I'd far rather the yarn was a little bit on the sturdy side than too soft. So that is the progress on the cowl. So let's talk about shiny new things next up. So there are not very many shiny new things this week compared to previous weeks. That's probably a good thing, but I think you'll probably like some of these options. So first thing is I picked up a copy of Wool Tribe, which is the companion magazine for Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I mentioned last week that I will be going to EYF, which I'm very excited about. And this is the companion magazine, which contains, I think it's 6 patterns, plus some really nice articles. There's a sort of suggested walk for the time that you're in Edinburgh. And it's also the map of the show floor and all that kind of stuff, so that's cool. I particularly like, where have they gone? These mittens and the hats. It's a herringbone stitch. The mittens are knitted flat, which is not generally my preference, but at least they're kind of bound off in a 3-needle bind off, so you don't have to do any seaming. So from that point of view, they might sort of win points back for not being knit in the round. So I really like those. There's a really lovely shawl pattern as well, bell side. Really like that. There's a crochet pattern in there as well, so for the non-knitters there is something for the crocheters as well. And then they have stuff like a little walk, suggested walk for the time that you're in Edinburgh. There's also a page about Shetland Wool Week, which I need to investigate a little bit more because I'm really hoping that I can go to Shetland Wool Week. So yeah, good little magazine, and that is going to be my companion to EYF. While we're on the subject of EYF, I did discover that one element of my genius plan is not going to work out. My genius plan is that I'm going to get the coach overnight up to London, spend the day in London, go to Leap Knit Night, and I was hoping to meet up with my friend Kate while I was there, because she and I normally go to Knit Night if I'm in London. I sent her a message on Twitter and I was like, hey, so, you know, are you going to be around? And she said, no, unfortunately, I'm not going to be around on the 9th of March because I'm already going to be in Edinburgh. Yes! So excited to be going to another yarn festival with Kate, because we had so much fun at Knit Nation, like ridiculous amounts of fun, and I'm so looking forward to having her there. because a lot of the other people that I know who are going to be there are stall holders. So they're not really, they're not really there to socialise on the shop floor. They're there to grow their business, and I fully respect that. So it's going to be good to have somebody who's not manning a booth to be able to chat to. Yeah, very excited. So I'm going to be meeting up with her and some of the other loop knitters for breakfast on the Friday morning. I don't have an advance ticket, so I'm then going to have to join the queue, and I'll get in when I get in, but I will get in, it's fine. And technically there's something else connected to Edinburgh Yarn Festival that should come in this section as well, which is I managed to get the equivalent of a golden ticket where Edinburgh Yarn Festival is concerned, which is I got a ticket to the Ceilidh. There are going to be people out there right now hating me. So I'm really sorry, but I did get a ticket to the Ceilidh, which is really awesome. The reason that this is like a golden ticket is it sold out in like a minute flat. It was at the end of my lunch break, so I already had the page up. I'd been refreshing the page a few times, and when the tickets came online, I was just like, yep, buy, auto-filled all of my information, check out with PayPal, done. And I got my one ticket that I requested. When I got that ticket, the thread on Ravelry about it was 1 page long. When I checked it later on in the day, it was 7 pages long with people going, I haven't got a ticket, and how quickly did they sell out, and how many were there, because they sold out really quickly. So yeah, it's kind of like Glastonbury or golden ticket. It's just ridiculous. So I feel a huge sense of responsibility to really enjoy the Ceilidh. The reason that I'm going to the Ceilidh, quite honestly, was because one of my friends who's helping on one of the booths had said to me, oh, if you get a chance, you might have to be my moral support through the Ceilidh because she hates parties. So I went, okay, fine, I'll try and get tickets for the Ceilidh, I am really looking forward to it, but I feel this huge sense of responsibility because I'm one of the lucky few who managed to get tickets when they were made publicly available. But I know there are lots of people with lots of different plans to do stuff on Friday night anyway, so I don't think anybody is going to have a miserable night sulking in their hotel room just because they didn't get Ceilidh tickets. I think some people had already organised to go to a different Ceilidh. Others are doing like a pub crawl, there's stuff going on. So if you are going to Edinburgh Yarn Festival and you don't have anything to do on Friday night and you want something to do, go on to the Ravelry group, and I'll put the title of the thread at the bottom here because there are loads of people looking to do stuff on Friday night. So just reach out and find some new friends. So those were a couple of shiny new things related to Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And the other shiny new thing arrived today. It's a little bit of a splurge, and I know opinions are kind of divided on this, but I got a field bag. I have to be honest, I saw this on Eric's podcast, Sticks Plus Twine. You must have come across it. If you're watching this, you must have come across Sticks Plus Twine. Eric is a Canadian podcaster, and when I first found his podcast, I went back and watched all the back episodes, and I think it's in episode 6, his New Year episode from 2015, 2016, that he talked about the field bag. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's really pretty. I like the style, I like the aesthetic. Then I looked up the price, and it was kind of expensive. They were around £50. I think the US price translates to about £52 right now. However, once you've got them into the UK and paid sales tax and shipping and all that stuff, obviously the price goes up a lot. So the only UK supplier right now is selling them at £60, which is a lot of money. However, this year I'm only knitting with my own handspun, which costs a lot less. So I figure that I can afford to put the money that I would otherwise be spending on yarn towards other treats. This is definitely a splurge purchase, and I will do a review at some stage, a proper review of the field bag, but just so that you can get an idea, I currently have the cowl in progress, the partial ball of yarn, and 3 other balls of yarn in there as well. And you might be able to see this pocket on the side here is kind of big enough to hold a folded pattern. It has 3 grommets along the side that you can feed your yarn through, so that if you're doing something like ferrule, they don't get tangled up. And then on the opposite side, you also have some pockets there with some little sections so that you can put pens and crochet hooks and stuff like that in there. It's definitely very well made. I'm trying to keep it fairly pristine because I want to do a little bit of a comparison review later on, so I'm trying to keep it fairly pristine for the moment. But it definitely fits a lot of stuff in there. I actually tried it with one of my finished sweaters, like quite a chunky sweater, and that fitted in there absolutely fine. So for me, it's going to be okay for sweater projects as well. I know that's not the case for everybody. I know some people have to have slightly larger bags, but for me, it's going to be okay. So yeah, field bag, happy with that. There is a bit of a tradition of putting pins, like enamel pins, on field bags. So I have ordered a couple of fun ones, but for now I have a little Herdy badge, which I think is going to go quite nicely on my field bag because it's like grey and green and it's going to be cute. So yeah, very happy with that. It is a splurge purchase, but as I say, I will do a proper review at some stage so that you can hopefully get all of the facts and you can see whether it's something that's worth it for you. It is a lot of money, but ultimately we spend a lot of money on knitting. So if it's a question of a project's worth of yarn or a bag that's going to keep your projects safe, maybe that's worth it to you, maybe it isn't. But I'll try and do a review so that you can get all the facts and the information. So next up, I have a little bit of a Q&A for you. So I've gone through the comments on YouTube and on Ravelry to pick out some questions that people have asked that I think will make a good Q&A session. So first of all, Jasmine on YouTube just a couple of days ago asked, she's a new spinner and she's wondering, how do you know how thick your singles have to be to come out as a certain thickness of plied yarn? And the answer to that really is you need to sample. And bear in mind that a freshly plied yarn is very, very different from a finished yarn. I showed an example a few weeks ago when I was doing the cowl spin that the freshly plied 3-ply plyback was completely different from the finished yarn. The finished yarn kind of fluffed up a lot because of the Polworth in that blend, and you really can't tell. There really isn't a particular formula for it, so you just have to sample and see. Madeline Woolhogs on Ravelry asked a similar question around how do you choose how many plies you're going to do for a particular project. Also a really good question. I think part of this comes down to stitch definition. A 2-ply yarn helps a stitch to open up more. So in general, 2-ply is recommended for projects that involve lace, whereas 3-ply or more is recommended for anything where you want a nice round yarn. So things like cables or, in my case, the kind of Gansey style cowl that I'm doing will work better with a 3-ply yarn because there will be more stitch definition. hopefully as we go into our sample along, you can try some things out and you can see what you prefer for different types of projects. The Yarn Parlour on YouTube asked what my favourite reference books are for spinning. So I talked about the Spinner's Book of Fleece a couple of weeks ago. Because I haven't really had any other spinning to do since I finished my cowl spin, because I've been focusing on actually knitting the cowl, I haven't really had a chance to properly use that one yet, but I definitely will do when I start the doodler spin. But it definitely looks like a really good resource book. I've had a little look at that before. Another great companion to that is the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs by Sarah Anderson, which takes you right the way through from simple 2-ply yarns right the way through to cables and then novelty yarns. So in terms of a reference book for how you actually make particular types of yarn, regardless of breed, then this is a good reference book for that. I also bought Yarn-i-tecture just before Christmas, and this is a really good option in terms of being purposeful in your spinning. Things like how to create different colour variations with painted top, actually knitting with your handspun. This is a really cool layout where it shows you the difference between the way that you finish your yarn. And I love the way that she's labelled some of these. So for example, you have things like whacked, fulled, and then there's menaced, which I love. Totally love the idea of a menaced yarn. So that one's very cool from a planning perspective. It's definitely a good recommend for that one. And one of my other favourites is this one. It's the Fleece and Fibre Sourcebook, which I really love because it's just a beautiful reference book of all of the different types of, not just sheep, there are other critters in there as well. So camelids, goats, rabbits, etc, etc. I would say that it's a little bit more North American focused, but not entirely. It does cover a lot of British breeds as well. They're looking into doing a second volume that is a little bit more European focused. So that'll be interesting to see if that makes an appearance at some stage. But the thing that I really like about it is that for each breed of sheep, they do a spread which includes pictures of how it spins up as a 2-ply and what happens if it's carded versus combed. And there are also little samples there as well, little woven or knitted samples. So it's a great reference book. I would definitely recommend it if you work from fleece. If you don't work from fleece, you could possibly get away with just having the Spinner's Book of Fleece. But this gives you a much wider reference, and that's what I really like it for. So there you go, that is my Spinner's Library. And hopefully that answers some of your questions. One of the other questions that I have had coming up quite a lot is, what is my schedule for the podcast? At the moment, I'm trying to do an episode a week, which is usually released on a Sunday morning, UK time. I can't always guarantee that that's going to be the case because sometimes I just have more times in one week than I do in another, but that's what I'm aiming for at the moment. It takes about half a day to get the podcast created, edited, titles done, all that kind of stuff. And I do have quite high production values because I used to work in film and television, and so my production values are probably quite a bit higher than other people. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that sense. So it does take me a little while to make the podcast, and that's why I can't always guarantee that it's going to be once a week, but I will try. I will try my best. Now on to the sample along. So our first sample along is going to commence on the 1st of March, and the topic is 2-ply worsted. There's no particular breed that I'm asking you to spin with. I just want everybody to spin a 2-ply worsted yarn in whatever fibre you prefer. And the idea is just to create a 2-ply sample and knit it or weave it or crochet it into a finished fabric. The reason that we're doing 2-ply worsted as our starting point is that I think for a lot of people that's their default yarn. And what I would suggest is to make sure that it is as close as possible to proper worsted yarn. Spin it short forward draw, preferably from combed top, just so that you can see. So as we start to build these samples, we can start to see what changes there are and what differences there are between different breeds and different drafting styles and so on. So 2-ply worsted is our first sample along topic. I will start a thread on the Ravelry group for discussion and encouragement about the sample along. So I hope that's something that you guys will all join in with. If you feel like making more than one sample, then absolutely go ahead. I would love to see different variations. The real purpose behind the sample along is that I want to be more purposeful in my spinning, and it seems like a lot of you guys do too. So by taking note of the intricacies of our craft, I think we can pick up on some things that we need to improve, or some characteristics of a particular spinning method, or number of plies that we particularly like. So as you're spinning your samples, that's what we're going to need to look out for. What can we improve? What can we change? What do we like about this particular fabric? So that's pretty much it for Tiny Fibre Studio for this episode. In between now and the next episode, you can find me as Tiny Fibre Studio on Instagram, as ibecks on Ravelry, and there is also the Ravelry group. So pop in there, see some more details of the sample along, and also join in on the discussion about this episode. So hopefully you found this episode useful and interesting. If you do, please drop me a comment, let me know what you think, either on YouTube, which is probably the easiest, or on Ravelry. I try to go through my YouTube comments at least once a week to just check in and reply to everything. So YouTube is definitely a good place for me to reply to comments. But don't forget that the Ravelry group is there as well for you guys to be able to talk to each other and start encouraging each other on the sample along. So in between now and the next time, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again soon.